Nearly 21 weeks and 3,921 miles ago, we started this college football journey, and it brings us to Atlanta, Notre Dame, and Ohio State, the national championship game, something that we've waited for, an expanded playoff for a long time, and we finally got it. And of course, we're here with you in the middle of the day, and we're live. So welcome in across all of our social channels. Here we go, boys. The national championship game is here. How you feeling?
Doing good, Mike. Can't wait. Oh no, we're good. We're good. We're good. No, this is exciting. This is a fun day. Watched a little bit of TV this morning. A couple of big things in the news going on, and ready for some football now.
After the day we saw yesterday, guys, and we'll touch a little bit on the divisional round here, but I think some of the hype behind this game kind of got swallowed up in the divisional round, just the way it kind of laid itself out on the calendar. But if you've seen anything from Atlanta so far today, and we're going to take you right up to about the other pregame show on ESPN College Game Day, we're going to do our best here to get you to that point. Thank you for joining us. Again, you can follow us on all of our social channels at Mike Arana Show. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the world of social channels right now, but if you're not seeing us on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, X, what else are we on? Facebook and YouTube, where we're live right now. If you're seeing us somewhere else, that's not actually us. But we thank you for joining us. TJ, I'm really liking this from not only a betting standpoint, but I'm liking this from a matchup standpoint a whole hell of a lot.
Oh yeah, this is the matchup that, I mean, let's be honest, this is the matchup that we should be getting. I mean, we're going to get two really good teams, duh. And but inside the battle within the battle, the offenses and against the other defense, this is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways, and we'll break down the game from all aspects that we can. First, we would be remiss if we didn't congratulate the SEC on making the national championship game. We've got an SEC crew tonight. This is the same crew from the Fiesta Bowl, so somehow, some way, the SEC still managed to get themselves into the national title game. And a lot on the line here, guys. Ohio State playing for their first championship since 2014, where they beat Oregon. Notre Dame, we know that goes all the way back to 1988 for the Irish. And we're going to dive full into this. But let's take a peek back at what we saw yesterday and on Saturday, man. What a weekend from the NFL side. And I can't say that anybody, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there holding a ticket or two that they cashed across the board on everything. But, man, we saw some incredible football from the start on Saturday with the Chiefs and Texans. Mac, do you have a takeaway from the divisional round of those four games, one that really jumped out at you?
Yeah, stop complaining and win the game on the field. That's what I want to say. Stop complaining about the refs. Stop complaining about drop passes. Just go out and win the game. That's all you have to do. Makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and I think most people's snap reaction is going to be what happened on Saturday night in Detroit. But TJ, what was the one thing that jumped off the page to you?
Kind of piggybacking on what Max said, like, can we just stop whining and just win some games and make some plays? Because it doesn't matter what happens. You got to make plays to win games. And we saw that very clearly last night when, for some reason, when your star players don't make plays, you don't win games. And that was a huge turning point yesterday.
Yeah, and when we're set, and obviously on our Football Friday show this week, we'll get to the NFC and AFC championship games. Two very compelling, two very interesting matchups. And, the thing that really jumped out to me, I mean, the shock was the Commanders beating the Lions, but that game last night, it lived up to every bit of the billing that we expected it to. It was supposed to be the heavyweight fight. It was put in the last spot on the weekend for a reason. And that Buffalo team, they're playing with all kinds of momentum. And I bring up Buffalo specifically because I think we're going to see a lot of similarities in the Buffalo Bills to one of our combatants in tonight's game, guys. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, because it seems to be a talking point. And Mac, I'm going to let you kind of run with this one first, because you brought it up already. A lot of people chattering, and even the Texans for that matter, about, hey, we knew it was us against literally the world, everybody. A lot of questionable calls in that game, but at the same time, you can't give up 7 points in the kicking game. You can't the Texans didn't turn the ball over, but you got to convert when the opportunities are there, especially when you're playing somebody as good as the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is this, all those little things make a difference. We do this all the time. We look at one play in the game, and we think that one play is kind of the manifestation of the whole thing, and it's really not. I mean, I'm sure they go back and look at that film, and there's got to be a dozen or so different opportunities where they go, man, if we would have converted there, if we would have stopped them there, if we could have got one more yard here, that would have made the difference in the game. And again, like I said, we just manifest ourselves on these one plays, these one calls. Listen, if you scored another 10, 15, 20 points, you wouldn't have to worry about it. It makes all the difference in the world. So again, let's take the referees out of this. They're not really playing the game. Yeah, I mean, it gives us something to talk about. It gives the fans the excuse out. I mean, I think the best video I saw recently was a priest. I don't know where he was. I'm assuming he was probably down in Phoenix. And in his his sermon, he was talking about the pass interference call that wasn't called in the ASU game. So even that still, it just kind of lingers. These things just kind of linger. The Texans had a chance in that game. We all know they had a chance. They just didn't play well enough. And as we said all year, TJ, the Chiefs just do what they need to do to win, and that's the bottom line. Until somebody can do it better than them, they're just going to continue to roll.
Yeah, TJ, you know what the funny thing is, too, and when we look at it from a betting standpoint, I saw so many people after that game was over and the Chiefs took the intentional safety, and they're like, see, this is the NFL being rigged. And not, dude, if you sat there and waited as long as you did and you got the game at 9, when all morning, all the way up until I think the last time I saw it was about an hour before kickoff, you could have gotten Houston plus 9.5. So take your tinfoil hats off, turn them sideways, shove them where the sun don't shine, get rid of your conspiracy bullcrap, because you could have taken them at 9.5. The people that are complaining about that and calling the NFL rigged are the same people that waited and waited and waited, and you missed your 9.5, and that cost you a bet. I don't feel sorry for you at that point. We all deal with them.
No sympathy. I mean, like you made your bed and you had to lie in it, right? You have to make decisions. If you're talking about your money, you have to make decisions on it as quickly or as whenever is possible. I'm sure the safety had Kaimi Fairbairn missed 2 field goals. So you want to complain? Send him the ticket and ask for your money back, or actually don't, because he's just going to rip you on socials and whatever. But yeah, like Max says, there's usually more than one play that turns the tide of a game, usually. So yeah, I don't have any sympathy for anybody who got it at 9 or whatever. I just don't. Sorry, not here.
Yeah, and again, thanks for joining us, everybody, at Mike Arana Show and all of our social channels. We went through the list for you. One that I didn't include, and this is one of our listener comments right now, Michael. What about Snapchat? Tony, why are we not on Snapchat?
Because Snapchat sucks and we're not 12.
Exactly. There we go. So let's talk about the game at hand tonight. Again, our Football Friday show, we'll get all into the AFC and NFC championship games. Very compelling matchup here, guys. Notre Dame and Ohio State, and both of these teams in this playoff have been absolutely dominant. And the first thing that jumps out when I look at this game before we get into the nuts and bolts of each side of the football here, Ohio State in the college football playoff has scored 42 points in the first quarter, Mac. Notre Dame in the first quarter of the college football playoff has given up absolutely 0 points. And we've talked many times this season about Ohio State's slow starts in the regular season. They seem to have flipped that page in the college football playoff, and they look dominant. But that's one thing that jumps out right away is we're going to learn a lot about this game in the first 2 possessions, I believe.
Yeah, one thing I find interesting, you see the trend nowadays is if you win the toss, what do? You defer to the second half. I wonder if Notre Dame would do that. I wonder if they win the toss if they take the ball. Because for Notre Dame, what they need to do is they want to shrink this game down. They want to limit the number of possessions that Ohio State's going to get. So that's going to be interesting to me to see right off the bat with the coin toss, if Notre Dame wins, if they decide to take the ball and say, listen, we're going to pound it, we're going to ground it, and we know you have a good defense, but we're going to make you play defense right from the start. That's going to be a sign for me to see where Notre Dame is in this game.
Yeah, and looking at it live as we approach kickoff here in just a few hours, depending on where you're looking, we're at about a 46.5 point total. 9.5 now is the spread in favor of Ohio State. So that number has gone up since where it was yesterday. TJ, when you break this game down, and I know you've talked about this position group specifically, so let's jump on to the defensive side of the ball. That Notre Dame secondary has been nothing short of elite for them, all your big plays, and you've seen it especially in the college football playoff, making the biggest plays in the biggest moments possible. And that Ohio State offense is going to test that secondary for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, we know, plays man-to-man defense about 60% of the time. Well, there's Jeremiah Smith and there's Emeka Egbuka. That's a tall task when you're playing Ohio State.
Oh, 100%. This secondary is in for a dogfight tonight, because I don't think there's anybody on the offense that's playing better than Smith right now. I mean, that guy just makes catches, and there's going to be a point where where Notre Dame's going to bring one of those safeties up to blitz, and then we're going to see what happens, right? Because you can't leave the receivers out there one-on-one. I think that's too much of a task to ask of Notre Dame. Although they're good at playing man-to-man defense, I think with these receivers, that's going to be too much. Plus, with Henderson and Judkins, I think that just adds a little more. That's just more weapons for Ohio State.
Yeah, and when you look at Henderson and Judkins too, and you look at their season output, both of these guys, and they should, and I would anticipate that they will tonight, both of these guys are less than 50 yards away from crossing the 1,000-yard mark for the season. So 2,000-yard backs, along with the weapons that they have on offense. And, Mac, you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that Chip Kelly's done a fantastic job since that Michigan game of putting Will Howard in the positions to make the plays within the scheme of their offense. And I really expect – I mean, you get to this point, and Notre Dame's not going to change their stripes in this game. They're a man-to-man team, and their secondary is good enough to do that. I would anticipate that we're going to see a little bit of help over the top to try and, eliminate the opportunity for them to go deep here. But Will Howard's been put in the positions by Chip Kelly to make the throws and make the plays that count in this playoff, and he's looked fantastic.
I think Notre Dame was really lucky because they got a good blueprint to follow in that last game against Texas. Defensively, that was a good model for them to kind of say, okay, because, Jeremiah Smith, he had just one catch in that game. So, still, like you said, there's other weapons, but Notre Dame's got to take something away. We saw that yesterday, the Rams couldn't take away the run from Barkley. So, again, when you have a team that's loaded with offense, you've got to kind of concentrate on taking one thing away. Will Smith has, from everything that's been said, all the scouting reports on the last couple of games, probably had his best 2 games of the year in his last 2 weeks.
Dropped a Will
so that
Smith
definitely helps. Yeah, Will Howard. I'm sorry. I was thinking Howard to Smith. That's what I was thinking.
We already know Max Lean. He's giving it up early.
Yeah, I know. Smith had just one catch in the last game. I can't imagine that he's going to just have one catch again this week. They're going to try to get him going. So that's a scary thing. If you're on that Notre Dame side, you just know that Ohio State is going to try to get him going, and I think get him going early.
Yeah, and TJ, some interesting traits here, and we can look at this. Let's look at common opponents. 3 common opponents for both of these teams: Penn State, Indiana, and Purdue. Both teams, Ohio State and Notre Dame, covered against those opponents easily. So when you look at this, there's not really a lean there. Here's a recent trend that kind of sticks out a little bit, and this comes from Action this morning. A Notre Dame victory would be the first win for the underdog in the national championships against Clemson in 2018. Here's the thing that really jumps off the page, and the spread climbing to 9.5 now. makes me really kind of open my eyes to this. Only 3 favorites have covered to fail since the first BCS title game in 1998. We're talking about nearly 30 years here that the favorite has almost covered all the time in the title game. So from a betting standpoint, TJ, that gives us a little bit of a lean, but there's just something about this Notre Dame team, and I'm going to drop it out here because I see some similarities to the Commanders when you look at it from an NFL standpoint, and some similarities to the Bills when you look at it from an NFL standpoint. This Notre Dame team really kind of feels like they're playing with the literal luck of the Irish right here. Like they've got things going in their momentum. They're a massive underdog in this game. Everybody is expecting Ohio State to just completely roll. There's something about this Notre Dame team that makes me believe that maybe we're going to see a difference in those betting trends.
Well, yeah, but I think Mac laid it out there, right? The whole idea, especially with that spread at 9 and 9.5, man, if Notre Dame shortens this game and limits possessions for Ohio State by grinding the ball out, and they don't even have to necessarily score Mac on every drive, but if they grind that clock and shorten that game, it's just like in a baseball game. If you can get through to the 5th inning and then start throwing in relievers 1, 2, 3, 4, then the game's over. So if they can just shorten this game and limit possessions for Ohio State, then that 9.5 is very attractive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
that moved.
As we say, and that starts putting a little pressure on Ohio State too. All of a sudden, if you're in the second quarter and this is just your 3rd possession, say for instance for Ohio State, even if you scored on one of those, you're going, man, oh man, if this is the way Notre Dame's going to play, we may only get 3 or 4 more possessions. So what that means to me, the big play in this game is going to be we have 2 of the top defensive teams in the country. They're both 1 and 2 in just about every category. Who can get that crucial turnover? Which quarterback's going to make the mistake? Which running back's going to, fumble a ball? That's going to be these turnovers. It's almost like getting 2 turnovers, if you will, in this type of game. Because again, possessions are crucial in this type of game.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the second quarter, Mac, because this is an interesting stat. And, we can all jog back to our coaching days, the 3 of us here, different sport, but you always talk about how you end a quarter and how you start a quarter, or as you're going into halftime, how you finish the half and how you start a half. And we talked about deferring and taking the ball and all that stuff. Notre Dame owns a plus 8.7 middle 8 differential. So we're talking the end of the second quarter into the first, 4 minutes of the third quarter here. They're 5.9 on the positive side at the end of the second, 2.8 at the beginning of the third. And we saw that in the Sugar Bowl when they scored, 17 points in the last 54 seconds, of the Sugar Bowl, and the game was tied at 3-3 before the 17 points. So, you see Notre Dame's strength in the end of half and beginning of second half. So, again, this is a game where, legit, the coin toss tonight has a massive impact to, I think, how this game goes. And I do agree with you. If Notre Dame gets that ball first, somehow they lose the toss and Ohio State defers, like both of these coaches always do. Both of them defer to the second half every time. If Notre Dame goes down and grinds out the clock for 10.5 minutes to start the game, that's a massive advantage for Notre Dame, Mac.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, this is how Notre Dame got here. I mean, it's a power brand of football. It really it's like old Notre Dame football. I mean, that's exactly what this is. You think back to some of the, I think back to, Jerome Bettis. I mean, of course, a Steeler. That's where I'm going to go with that. But that's the kind of game that they're going to play. And it totally makes sense. That's why they're so good in those middle quarters. They start to wear you down a little bit. I mean, run. It doesn't. You don't have to be successful. A running team is not always successful, every time down. They're not looking to be successful, but what they're looking to do is to do damage. They're looking to take time off the clock. They're looking to pound you, and then all of a sudden, when you're a little bit tired, boom, they break off a big run. Or better yet, I mean, they have a quarterback that can run just as well and throw the ball fairly decent as well. So, yes, they're a running team, but, Leonard's, I think his stock has gone up tremendously from the beginning of the year. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see, how much he is going to be involved in this running game, because as you saw in the last game, they used him quite a bit from about the middle of the third quarter, the fourth quarter. Almost it seemed like every running play was some sort of a quarterback keeper. So again, he's just a good change of pace running back.
Yeah, and you talk about it, TJ, from that standpoint is we know Ohio State's got the number one defense in the country, and they've done a fantastic job all year long. So when you look at the offensive weapons for Notre Dame, obviously you're looking for Jaden Greathouse to have a big game for them. Jordan Faison is another guy, the two-sport athlete that I think can have a massive impact in this game for Notre Dame. We know what they can do on the ground, but that Ohio State defense and that Ohio State defensive line makes everything you do on the ground very, very difficult. And I'm looking at, another thing going into this game. We saw it in the last game in the Orange Bowl that Notre Dame played. Jeremiah Love, he's been banged up. He's been dinged up. Apparently, according to him, he's about 90% today. What I think we're going to see, and I'm hoping we're going to see if you're a Notre Dame backer here, is more of Love involved in the passing game. It looked like in the Orange Bowl, they were kind of trying to be a little cautious when we know the touchdown run that he had in that game was fantastic, especially being as banged up as he is. But I'm really expecting to see a tick in the passing opportunities and the reception opportunities, if you will, for Jeremiah Love this week as compared to the Orange Bowl.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that the Notre Dame has to do that in order to neutralize the speed of the Ohio State front seven. I mean, they just have to. This Ohio State, that defense is so fast. Like, I thought Texas was fast, and then I started watching that Ohio State-Texas game, and I was just blown away. They have to get past that first line. And I think the effective way to do that is just short, quick outs to Love and make that happen. I think you're right, Mike. I think they try Notre Dame's offense tries to take advantage of Love's ability and throw him out of the backfield just as a change of pace and get those sticks moving.
Yeah, and we break down, and we're going to continue to break this game down as we walk closer to the pregame show. We're the pre-pregame show. Again, thank you for everybody joining us today. Follow us on all our social channels at Mike Arana Show, except for Snapchat because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks and all that fun stuff. I got to give a shout out to Mercedes-Benz Stadium today, guys. Prices, fan-friendly prices today. Check this list out. Sodas, pretzels, and popcorns, $2. Hot dogs, fries, $3 each. Draft beers, $5. Cheeseburgers, $5. Now, I wonder if you get the cheeseburger without the cheese, if it's $4. Neither here nor there, but pretty cool to see like a game of this magnitude, the first college football playoff national championship in this format. And we're getting some fan-friendly prices. Like the scene down there in Atlanta is already jumping from the early accounts this morning. And I wonder how much we are going to see as far as the fan base goes. We know the Ohio State fans travel like crazy. They're all over the place, but so are Notre Dame fans. And Notre Dame fans have been waiting a long time for this opportunity. Obviously, as we know, famously, it's been beaten over the head here in the last couple of weeks. Brian Kelly didn't feel like he could win a national championship at Notre Dame, and he hasn't been to the college football playoff since. And here's Marcus Freeman in his third year. And when you look at both of these coaches, guys, both of these guys under mass scrutiny, and we go back for Notre Dame to the Northern Illinois loss. That was Marcus Freeman's 9th loss, I believe, already in his third year as a coach. The bottom could have fallen out of this thing real quick for the Irish. They kept doing what they were doing. They kept playing their brand of football, which is extremely physical. That's the thing in this game I think I'm most excited for, Mac. Both of these teams are going to hit the living crap out of you. They play a physical brand of football. I think that's one of the more exciting things that I can't wait to see tonight is the hits and the defensive playmakers from Xavier Watts to Jack Sawyer. I mean, you go up and down the rosters on both sides from a defensive standpoint, Mac, these two teams are loaded.
Yeah, this game kind of has like an old school feel to it. I mean, we have two schools that have great football history. I mean, we all remember when both these teams, or at least I do, I'm the old guy here. I mean, we remember when both these teams dominated the field. I mean, I remember we just, Notre Dame, it just seems like they never lost. And the same with Ohio State. And so there's just a lot of history with these two teams. And then you look at the way that they play, especially, we'll start with Notre Dame. I mean, just that grounded out kind of style. And Ohio State, yeah, they're flashy on offense, but like you guys have been saying, this is a defense that is just it's off the charts. Let's be honest. This Ohio State defense is off the charts. And remember, I think the other thing that's kind of cool about this is that when you have a team like Ohio State, we can joke about them, winning big games or not. But if you look, this was a team that was supposed to be here at the beginning of the season. When the season ended last year, one of the first teams that people said, "Oh, watch out for next year," was Ohio State, and that's as the Detroit Lions. It's a hard thing to do to really be a favorite and to actually get to the championship. It's not easy, and the road isn't easy. And kind of my hats off to Ohio State for getting where they are. But you're right. This is going to be just, I think, a fun football game to watch. Two good schools, and it really might come down to a coaching decision, and that's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, back to the coaches, Ryan Day, the same thing. I mean, everybody wanted him bounced out of town after they lost to Michigan, and we've talked about they've literally been in full attack mode and just absolutely dominating since that game. And I mean, the thought that, and I saw this on X yesterday, somebody posted a billboard. There was a couple billboards in Ann Arbor, and it says, you can't be the champs if you can't beat the champs. And it's kind of funny in a weird little sub-story, TJ, that Michigan could be the reason that Ohio State ends up winning this national title. And nobody from OHIO, since apparently that's a hard thing to spell for everybody, nobody from there is going to sit there and admit it. But we all know what we saw. Ohio State looked like they didn't even belong in the playoff after that game against Michigan. And they've looked like the team we thought they were going to be since then.
Yeah, Ohio State looked like they were just not even interested in playing the game. And the outcome reflects that, right? But then somehow they took their 3 weeks, and then they just started pounding teams. Like that Oregon game was an ass whooping. Like it wasn't even close. The Tennessee game, not even close. The Texas game, even. Like, did you ever feel watching that game that Texas had a chance? I didn't really. After I just, it was just one of those things where you're watching it. It was kind of like the Notre Dame Indiana game where the score wasn't really that the gap in the score wasn't really that much, but you're just looking at it going, no, not today. Yeah, that Michigan loss completely galvanized that team. But I'm gonna go a little tin foil hat with you.
Oh God, here he goes.
I'm starting to think that they might not have put their full effort into that Michigan game to begin with. And I don't think, and all that loss did, like they were going to play, all that loss did was it shifted their bye week is all it did. It shifted their bye week, because if they would have gone to the Big Ten title game, they would have got a bye week for that. So now they're not in the Big Ten title game. So their bye week goes to that week. They can get healthy. They can get their offense together, because the offense looked atrocious. And you give Chip Kelly 3 weeks to game plan for Tennessee. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that we talked about, was because we, in that game against Michigan, Will Howard didn't throw the ball at all. I mean, when he did, it was really, really short. Mm-hmm. And, people wondered, is it the offense or is he hurt? Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously they're not going to come out and tell us that, but maybe TJ, you're right. Maybe this was like, hey, we really need a week off, and not that we want to lose to Michigan, but in the best of both worlds, maybe it won't be the worst thing in the world.
But I'll put my hat away, and then I'll bring it back on Football Fridays, because I've got some things to say about some other team that wears red.
Yeah, get our Football Friday show Friday at 3:30 on the West Coast, 6:30 on the East Coast, as always. But another thing that I think is important to kind of look at here, and maybe this is the thing that will prove to be true, or I could just be completely full of crap here, but we saw what Texas did to Ohio State. And if we really, really dive deep into what we watched in that game, we had the strip sack and the fumble return, and we had a huge screen pass. And outside of that, what did Ohio State end up with against Texas's defense? They would have had 14 points other than those two plays. Now, great teams make great plays when they need to be made. But how much of a layout, if you will, did the Horns give Marcus Freeman and the Irish for this game on how to do this? And we talked about Notre Dame's propensity to play man defense at about a 60% rate. Well, Texas kind of does the same thing, but Texas made sure they rolled their coverage over the top, over to Jeremiah Smith's side. Obviously, they got beat on the screen, which was huge, and it was a huge momentum play in that game. But, Mac, I think that's the one thing here is, are we overblowing Notre Dame's secondary because they haven't really seen receivers that Ohio State has? And are we overblowing the powerful offense of the Buckeyes based on how they ran away from Texas? And if you dive into the numbers of those games, it was two big plays that kept the Buckeyes from having 14 points. So trying to figure out which one of those is true, and both things can be true, is kind of the interesting thing. I think the hardest way to kind of decipher how this game goes.
No, I mean, listen, and Notre Dame's defense is just as good, well, statistically even better than Texas. I mean, for me in this game, I think the key, we can talk about defense because I think both defenses are going to rise to the occasion. I think, honestly, this is going to be a defensive battle. I think both these defenses are going to show out tonight. For me, one thing. It's what defense can get a turnover. You know, like I said, I talked about it. I thought Texas, it's a perfect blueprint, like you said, for what's going to happen. But what defense can force a turnover and force a mistake? I think that's going to be absolutely critical. And then for me, I think it's about the coaches. I think what offensive coordinator is going to be able to find some loophole, some weakness in this defense that nobody has been able to find all year long. And again, we're talking about it's going to be one play. This game's going to come down to one play somewhere. It's going to be a play that we didn't think is going to happen. And I'm not talking about a trick play. I'm just saying, and you guys know this, we've all coached, you always save something. You know, you always have something in your back pocket. Well, today's the day you empty out your back pocket. And these teams are going to do that. You know that they have specific things that they've been all year saying, all right, this is a play we haven't run. This is the perfect situation for it. And boom, that could be the difference.
Yeah, and you've seen Notre Dame's propensity to pull out the trick play. I mean, we saw it in the Sugar Bowl with you know, a couple of the trick plays that they ran against Georgia. And when it comes down to a coaching matchup, TJ, this is where I go back to another guy that we've talked about quite frequently this year, in James Franklin. So who do you trust from a coaching standpoint here more, Ryan Day or Marcus Freeman? And that's an interesting question here because Freeman in his third year, you know, does he have enough of the big game experience to call the right shots? He's been an aggressive coach all season long, and Ryan Day is Ryan Day. I mean, he's one of the winningest coaches in college football right now going, one of the winningest coaches of all time in college football. He's never lost more than 2 games in a season. So which coach do you lean for a little bit more on their side here in this matchup?
Yeah, that's a tough call. But I want to go back to the secondary really quick because these definitely are the best receivers that Notre Dame has faced. But if you look at just track record, right, like against Georgia, they held Arian Smith to 1 reception. Yeah, it was a big one. They held him to 1 reception. Tyler Warren, 75 yards. Like that's a pretty good if you're going to hold a top receiver to 75 yards, I think you have a pretty good shot. And so it almost reminds me of, you can't stop them, you can only hope to contain them, right? So that Notre Dame defense, it's like the Philadelphia Eagles, bending and not breaking. Like they let the Rams move the ball, it seemed like yesterday, within the 20s, like at will. But once they got it inside the 20, it seemed like the Eagles stepped up and made it difficult for the Rams to score. That's kind of like what Notre Dame's secondary needs to do to be successful. Yes, let Smith get his and let Will Howard get his yards, but keep him away from the big plays and keep him out of the end zone, and you'll probably be in good shape. As far as the coaches go, what I'm fascinated to see is if Notre Dame goes on and actually wins this game, what the delusional fans in Columbus are going to think about Ryan Day. Because a month ago, they wanted him out, and they go on this run where they're dominating teams. And now they're in the national title game, which a lot of people expected him to be. And so now you're playing one of the best teams, because Notre Dame's one of the best teams. If you lose this, now what are you going to do? And are you going to blame Ryan Day for everything? I think we got to give Ryan Day a lot of credit here for coaching his team up over the last 3 games. And we also got to give Marcus Freeman give him his props too. Like that's a program that doesn't play in a conference, so they don't get the benefit of a national conference championship game. The ACC was where most of their opponents was not a great conference from top to bottom this year, and they just won, and they won big. So let's give him his props as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we lock into our game picks here, again, I appreciate everybody joining us. You can follow us at Mike Arana Show on all the social channels, most of them. Let's talk about just this position that we're in here as a whole for a little bit, guys. The college football playoff, we talked about it for years and years and years. It was the 5th team that got left out of the 4 teams, and there was always something to complain about. Obviously, this year we had a lot to complain about. In whether Alabama was going to get in, this, that, and there's always going to be that. Whether, in TJ, you've said this a bunch of times this year, whether we go to 12 to 16 to 24 to 18 down to 8, which is never going to happen. But no matter how we expand this, there's always going to be room for debate and room for whining and crying and stuff like that. I think in this version of what we're seeing, Vegas Mac, that this is exactly what college football wanted. And I think this format is in a good trajectory going forward. Obviously, the automatic buys are something that's going to come up. But again, those of you hoping that that's going to change next year, it's not going to for at least another year. So this is the situation that we're in. We had meaningful games in November. We've had decent games in the playoff. And again, you're always going to get blowouts. We saw it at the beginning of the NFL playoffs with Houston and the Chargers. I mean, with the Steelers and the Ravens. You're going to get lopsided games no matter what. But I think as a whole, Mac, we're on the right path here. There needs to be some tweaking. And anytime you bring out a new format to anything, there's always going to be tweaking. As a whole, I'm a little sad. I'm sad on 2 accounts because there are 4 football games left for the entire season. After tonight, there will be 3. And I think what this thing was set out to do, it did its job.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, part of that when anything new, it looks great on paper, but we don't play it on paper. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be some tweaks that we have to do. I mean, are these the teams that we thought we'd get in the championship game? Well, one of them, yes, the other one, no. And that's okay. I'm all right with that. But you're right. I mean, college football is changing, and we have to be aware of that. If you're not aware of that, then you've been under a rock for quite some time. I mean, you've got college athletes right now that are getting paid more so than professional athletes are, and it's college football especially is changing in that way. You're going to get more guys who have more experience. You're not going to get, like in basketball, you're not going to get these one and done guys. Some of these guys playing college football are going to stay for an extra year or two. That old quarterback from Georgia, Carson Beck, right? He's going to stay for another year. Why? Because he's going to go down.
Carson Beck, dude.
Well, but listen, I mean, how many of us would like to have that paycheck when we were in college?
No,
I would like to have it now.
I'm not complaining about the paycheck. Go get it. Go get yours. But $4 million for Carson Beck, Miami. What are you doing?
I know, but this is how. I mean, and Miami is a good example. This is the 2nd year in a row now. They've basically gone out and paid for a quarterback. College football is changing. And you're right. It's why, Nick Saban's not coaching anymore. It's one of the reasons, and why you see some of these older coaches kind of just going, this is not what I signed up for. It's, you used to be able to knock on the door and say, I'm Alabama, come play for me. It's not the same anymore. It's, I'm the University of Alabama secondary school, and I'm going to give you $8 million. Come play for me. And they're like, okay, let's go do it. So it's, college football is changing. And this is part of it. The playoff is part of it. Is it going to be better next year? Yeah, we know it's going to be better because there will be a tweak or two. But you're right that when you first roll out the road, it's a dirt road and it's a bumpy road, and they're going to come and they're going to pave it a little bit. It's going to be a little bit better.
There's definitely plenty of money to pave it. What general thought, TJ? I mean, your side of what we've seen, and you and I have kind of talked about this, off to the side a little bit. I mean, one of the things you brought up specific, easy for freaking you to say, English is a funny language. When you talked about how the funny thing about this new format is you're the Cotton Bowl champion, you're the Orange Bowl champion, you're the national champion. It's like it does tend to be a little bit of overkill. I get it. Like, you win a bowl game, that's tradition, but I think you're the one that is still kind of split on how good this is or isn't.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about this. First, and this all goes back to the realignment. I thought the realignment was a joke. I think it ruined a lot of things. I don't like, and this is being exacerbated. Like, if you want to do this for football, I guess. But I mean, we're seeing with Mick Cronin, all his comments about how this is what his UCLA basketball team is having to go through. Like, they've seen the Statue of Liberty
twice in 3 weeks.
Like, I haven't seen the Statue of Liberty twice in my life. So I have a lot of issues with the realignment. You knew it was going to go to at least an 18 playoff eventually. 12, yeah, whatever. I mean, you got to tighten it up a little bit. I don't like how we're playing into mid-January, but at the same time, what we really need to do is we just need to recognize, like Max said, college football is changing. I don't like it, but okay, I guess I'll deal with it. But we got to stop calling it what it is. This has nothing to do with student athletes at all. This is about athletes, and this is about money, and this is about paychecks. That's all this is about. And so if you just call it minor league football, then it's more better representation of what it is. I'm okay with the 12-team playoff, I guess. You're going to, but I do think we're going to see changes for sure. It needs to be changed. But, there's no going back. So for me, it's one of those things where I know there's no going back. Yes, we got to work with what we got.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we wind down here a little bit, our game picks are coming up. I'm going to go across the board here, guys. The biggest X factor in tonight's game that makes the biggest difference. And for me, it's going to be the Ohio State defensive line against Notre Dame's rushing attack. I think that's where, we saw at the beginning of the year, Riley Leonard struggled to throw touchdowns at the beginning of the year for the Irish. He's really kind of settled in, and they have so many tentacles, if you will, to their running attack here. And to me, that's the matchup I'm watching. Yes, off the top of the board, and I'm trying not to piss in your guys' pool, if you will, on this, but there's a lot of other ways to look at this. There's a lot of other ways you can take this. But to me, I think that's exactly where this game kind of gets settled, is that Notre Dame offense and that rushing attack, which is, you can't even call it a 3-headed rushing attack. It's more of a 4 or 5-headed rushing attack against that defensive line for Ohio State. What is the X factor for you, Mac, before we make our picks here?
Well, as the Texas Longhorns, red zone defense for Ohio State, 61% scoring average, first in the nation, 11% sacking percentage, first in the nation. What is Notre Dame going to do in the red zone?
TJ.
I think the biggest question is the opposite of what you said, Mike. I think it's the Ohio State offensive line. I mean, they got a little banged up towards the end of the season. Can they give Howard enough time to hit his targets, and Smith and Emeka and whomever that backs out of the backfield? they got to give him time to make good decisions. If they can't give him time to make good decisions, he's there in for a long day.
Let's take a look at this before we jump into some official pick. This over-under number, very interesting here because we know these are two very dominant defenses. Obviously, Ohio State's offense comes with more flash, more sizzle, more electrifying opportunities there because of the playmakers that they have. 46.5 is a very, very interesting number here. And it's a really hard number to gauge because you're talking 28-21, 28-24, 24-20. That's, I think, somewhere in the range of where we're going to end up. Hell, I hope it gets to double overtime tonight. I don't want it to go to triple overtime because on a national stage, national champion, you just imagine that finally the 12-team playoff, we get it. It goes to overtime. It goes to a second overtime, and this thing gets settled on a plethora of two-point roulette. That would be a disaster for college football. But this over-under number, guys, is very interesting at 46.5 because, those guys in Vegas, they're pretty damn smart, and they set this one right in the sweet spot here that it's really hard to make a gauge. What do you guys think of the point total at 46.5 based on these two defenses, Mac?
I'm leaning towards a lower scoring game. So for me, I think we're going to see more field goals tonight than we will touchdowns tonight. And so that, to me, that pushes me towards leaning towards an under in this game.
DJ, the number is 46.5. You are the king of overs.
I am the king of overs. That Ohio State that passing game, man, that's the part that scares me the most. Even though Notre Dame's secondary is amazing, but like we've said, this is the best receiving core that they've seen, and rightfully so. You're in the championship game. This should be the best team that you've seen all year. That's how it's supposed to work. I think it goes over though. I think it's close, but I think it's one of those. But I think it barely goes over. I think you're looking at like 27-24 in that ballpark.
It's like sucker written all over it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's usually what the over/under is. It's suckers
it is
unite.
Sucker
right
bet,
there.
but I love it.
Well, that's why the over bet is so much fun, though. It's just like you have no dog in the fight, and you're just like, and I'm going to use this quote directly because TJ and I have probably shouted this inside a Vegas sportsbook a couple of times in our life. It's when you bet the over, it's keep firing assholes is literally what we say. I mean, the over bet's so much fun. And again, they didn't build Vegas on winners. They built Vegas on losers, and 46.5 is I've been stalking that one, and I'm going to continue to stalk it. As we sit here about 3 hours from kickoff, I'm going to continue to stalk that probably until the game goes off. And that's one of the things that we've talked about several times on our Football Friday shows this year. Sometimes the number you like is not a number you take at the beginning of the game. It's a number you take 5 minutes into the game, TJ. And that's always a strategy.
Well, something that's very interesting. You mentioned about Notre Dame's stats in the middle 8. And I think the addition of the 2-minute timeout has a lot to do with that, because what that's done is it's basically given the offense extra plays, because before there would be no timeout at 2 minutes. So if you wanted to, you'd either have to use your timeouts or you're not running as. I think that's extended the games. And I think that's a factor in me thinking this is going over.
Yeah. And again,
so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that. I'm sorry, Mike. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially at the end of the first half. And especially if Notre Dame has the ball. That's because you could see 2 touchdowns really quick with these two offenses.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, too, that I think makes a big difference before we lock in our picks here. It's the Notre Dame defense in that secondary. And again, we talked about it a few minutes ago. They haven't seen a wide receiver group as talented as Ohio State has. And granted, most teams in the country hadn't seen a wide receiver group as talented as Ohio State has. So those of you that think I'm always throwing shade on Ohio State, I'm not. They're as good as it gets. So is it Notre Dame's secondary? Is that elite? but everybody's talking about how Ohio State is more explosive and they haven't played anybody, or is that Notre Dame secondary that elite? And I think that goes a long way to kind of how we progress everything into making picks and positions on whatever side you want. I've got to know, do we all think across the board that this is an Ohio State game to lose? Because I don't think we're all on that same page here. And I looked at this from a couple of different avenues here. You look at the, and again, it depends on the book that you're looking at. We're here just a few hours away from game time, but, you know, the first half spread. Notre Dame, 5.5 point underdogs in the first half. And that over and under number is at 23. So obviously, you know, if you're into the betting side of things, it's the last college football game. You think you know your position. You've seen all the games this year. You're going to fall on whichever side of the fence you do. That's an interesting number for me in the first half. Again, and you brought it up at the start of this show here, Mac, the deferral from both coaches on the opening coin toss, who gets the ball first. And if Notre Dame gets that ball first, we could be looking at 11 minutes of the first quarter gone, and it's 3-0, which therefore a 23.5 points or 23-point spread is what it's at on this particular app that I'm looking at in the first half. That goes a long way to that over or under situation there. So as we look at this, I've got this game played a couple of different ways. I've got Notre Dame in the first half plus the 5.5. I've got it under 23 in the first half. Do you guys want to jump on my train with that? Do you have a different position, Mac? Just talking about the first half right now.
First half, yeah. I mean, I if you look at the games the last couple of weeks, the first halves have been a little slow. I think it's kind of like a prize fight. I think they're just kind of, you know, feeling each other out, you know, trying to figure it out. And then all of a sudden, you know, at halftime, whether they feel as though they've made the adjustments or they just feel a little looser. We've seen a lot more points in the second half of games over the last couple of weeks than in the first half. So, yeah, I mean, I would be buying what you're selling.
Teach.
I like this game to stay close in the first half as well. I'm totally on board with the Notre Dame plus 5.5 in the first half.
All righty, let's lock in some official game picks here. We are a show of the people, so what we want to do is make sure that you can get out, get your snacks, start your wings, get your beer cold, get your bottle of Jameson cold if you're an Irish fan. I don't know what the hell they drink in Columbus, but, you know, Buckeye juice, whatever that is. TJ, I will start with you. Those of you that have followed us on Moss Football Friday, this end of the show where we do our best bets and our picks can sometimes, hell, it even involves buckets of random chicken. TJ, lock it in, the official national championship game. Where are you going? How are you playing the game tonight from a betting standpoint?
I am taking the over because I think, as Max said, I think this is going to open up a little bit in the second half. It's going to be a marathon here. Taking Notre Dame in the points.
Vegas Mac. I'm standing, so please be careful. I'm getting older. It is really cold down here in the valley part of Arizona, so the bones are a little brittle. I've been fighting off a cold. Go ahead. Brace yourselves, folks.
No. You know what? I'm not gonna bring out any fireworks for tonight. We're gonna keep it real here right now.
I hope you're not bringing out fireworks in the house.
Got to do something. It's cold. It was 5 this morning. Goodness gracious, 5. Anyway, I really think it's going to be the under. I mean, I just really do. I think a lot of field goals in this game. I think both these teams, as I said, defensively, Ohio State's really good in the red zone. They don't give up a whole lot. I think that's going to contribute to it. My heart, I really want Notre Dame to win this game. That's what my heart's saying. But I really feel as though this is going to be a game for Ohio State. I don't think the line is at 8 or 8.5, 9. I don't think they would cover that. I just think this game is going to be really close. I think it's going to come down to a field goal. I think we're going to see a field goal in the last minute of the game. for Ohio State, and that's going to be the difference in the game. I think we're going to see another big Ohio State turnover late in the fourth quarter. They're going to get that turnover and convert it to a field goal, and that's going to be the difference in this game.
You know, I saw a post, and it was on X, and this was I think a couple of weeks ago. It was after the college football playoff tournament started, and Respect Sports, RE2PECT Sports on X posted this, and something caught my eye. What rewatching Rudy is what he wrote. Is it destiny? And there's a shot from the chalkboard behind Rudy from November 30th, 1974, and it says defense, Riley and Jeter. And at the beginning of this whole mess, when we started our Football Fridays and we started talking about the college football playoff, I picked Oregon and Notre Dame to play in the national title. I believe in this Notre Dame team because of the brand of football they play. They're on house money, and we have seen this, and this is part of why so many people have a disdain for Notre Dame. And, you know, we know people have a disdain for Ohio State, but the disdain for Notre Dame and the thing for years is the luck of the Irish. The luck of the Irish. This team has something that you want to see from a team heading into a title game. I am all over Notre Dame. First half money line, plus 5.5. I took the under in the first half of the 23. I played the game, Notre Dame, and the over tonight. And I am going to, as soon as we're done here, run back to my phone, make another bet because that number's up to 9.5. So if you're going to continue to give me points, Ohio State's fantastic. They've been on a hell of a run since the Michigan game. There's just something about Marcus Freeman's group in this Notre Dame team and how multifaceted their running attack is. Give me the Irish. Give me the Irish all night long. Oh no is how this one finishes up. Boys, I'm going to go start some wings. I'm going to go throw a couple of pies in the oven, make a little 7-layer dip. How do we go from here in the Vegas Mac household for the national championship game tonight?
Well, it'll be a little quiet. We got to get the kids down to bed, so it's a little bit quiet on a school night. So, get the kids down nice and early, have a nice early dinner, and then just sit on the couch with a couple of blankets and some chips and just kind of enjoy.
You're not sitting in your office with random buckets of fast food and watching it in there today?
No, because it's about 20 degrees colder in this side of the house.
Sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. TJ, what's on the menu in the TJ household for the game tonight?
Tonight we got some nice little steak kebabs going, and maybe a cold beverage or 7. And no, probably just 1 because we have to work tomorrow. But it's going to be pretty mellow tonight because it's a Monday. So maybe when they redo this, I know they don't want to go against the NFL, but maybe you can redo this and put the national championship game on a Saturday since most of your damn games on a schedule are on Saturdays. Dopes.
Saturday night would be so perfect. Just like we were going to continue to bang the drum for a Saturday night Super Bowl. Maybe eventually we'll get that. So we've got a Football Friday coming up this Friday on all of our channels, and we'll preview the NFC and AFC championship games. We'll give our thoughts on what we see tonight, obviously, on our social channels. Again, at Mike Arana Show, Facebook, Insta, X, Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, for however long TikTok wants to hang out. If you're seeing us anywhere else, that's not actually us. And how do you try and duplicate these 3 just god-awful faces right here? So that'll be Friday. Go get yourself ready for a national title game. This one's going to be a good one. Notre Dame, Ohio State. Get yourself comfortable for Vegas Mac. For TJ, I'm Mike. We will talk to you Friday. We're out.